Welcome to the Immeasurably More podcast. I'm Erin, here with my mom, Jill, and we are back with Conversations with Erin and Jill. I love these conversations so much, and we've taken the last few weeks to just do some really special episodes. If you haven't listened yet, I encourage you to go back. We talk about the Buffalo Bills. We talk about love because of Valentine's Day. We talk about some exciting news in my life. And so actually really in all of our lives because I'm pregnant. So that was a special
amazing.
news
It's so amazing
that we shared a few weeks ago. And so now we're back. And I think that alone, that episode alone kind of leads into today's conversation.
It does, 100%, because it wasn't too long ago, Erin, that you were overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And you even said to me, I feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one would say, Erin, why do you feel overwhelmed? You're pregnant and you do all these other things in life. So why are you overwhelmed? No, it's easy to get overwhelmed when we take on too much and when things in our life change drastically.
Yeah.
You being pregnant, which is an answer to a prayer that I've prayed for years, is evidence of God's healing. It is evidence of his goodness and faithfulness to our family. It is just so amazing and beautiful. And at the same time, being pregnant is not easy.
Right.
And so you were that day, I'll never forget it. You came up to me and you had that look that you have when you're 5 years old, that little sweet face. And I just knew. And so I hugged you and you said to me, I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. And that was really probably the first of many times that I've said that since then.
Right.
And so this question actually came from my grandma. And that's why we want to share it, not only because I feel very overwhelmed in this season, but I think everybody can relate with being overwhelmed. And
Absolutely.
so when we were talking about feeling overwhelmed and then we were on the phone with grandma and you said, Erin's feeling really overwhelmed. Like, can you be praying for her? And then it was grandma's idea. She was like, she actually sent a message to the podcast herself and said, how do you help someone that you love that feels overwhelmed?
Yes.
And so that's what we want to talk about today is feeling overwhelmed and what to do when you feel overwhelmed.
Right.
And I just want to start by saying that being overwhelmed is very normal.
Right.
And it comes in various seasons or different days. I think that there are some days when I feel more overwhelmed than others. It might be a day when I have a lot going on or there's things going on in the world that are out of our control. And so there are a lot of things that go into feeling overwhelmed.
Right. And I'll share 2 instances where I remember very specifically that I reached that point. And it's almost like a tipping point. And when I think of that, I think of, say, you have a cup of water, or a glass of water, and it's full. And one more drop, it'll overflow. And you just can't handle that one more drop in your life. You just can't handle that one more thing. And that one more thing might not be something big. It could be something very simple, like a simple task that you normally do every day, but you just cannot do it. You just can't take one more thing. And I had reached that point, and I'll never forget it. It was when your brother Hunter was here, and he, in fact, wasn't feeling well. And obviously, he had so many medical issues that one more thing on top of the normal medical issues that he had was just too much. And he was dealing with a respiratory infection, and there was just a lot going on in the house. And I reached that point, and I'll never forget because my cousin Jessica was there helping me. And she said, you need to go into your closet. And that sounds weird, but it was actually her saying to go in my actual closet. She said, you need to go in your closet, grab your journal, and start talking to God. And I did exactly what she said because she was right. I needed to stop. I needed to remove myself from the moment, and I needed to go and spend some time with God. I needed to cry. I needed to get on my knees, cry in my journal. I even remember the tears on my journal. I can picture it right now. And I remember that moment so clearly as if it was yesterday because I had reached a boiling point, so to speak. I had reached the end of myself, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's really not a bad thing to reach the end of yourself. We all need to be in that place at some point in life. And I believe God allows us to get to that place at different points in our lives so that we recognize that we cannot do it on our own and that we need his help.
Yeah. When I think about that cup of water and how you said sometimes it's not just the big thing that makes it overflow. I think about the fact that when we allow so many things into our life, when we allow ourselves to be overwhelmed by so much, or we add too much to our plate, or too much is on our schedule, it is the little thing that
Right.
ends up making the water overflow because it's so filled up to the top that it can't handle anymore.
Right.
And I have found that in my own life, it's usually the littlest thing
Mm.
that will make me say, I feel so overwhelmed.
Right.
And it's because it's built up so much over time of adding things to my plate or adding things to my schedule, thinking that, oh, I can do all of these things.
Right.
I don't need to rest. I don't need a break. But then it's that one little thing, whatever it may be. Maybe it's the laundry is piling up and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is making me feel so overwhelmed. But it's because of all those other
Right.
things that built up over time where if I had addressed those things and maybe said,
Mm.
okay, maybe this isn't important. Is this a necessary thing in my life in this
Right.
season? Well, if I had addressed those things first, then I wouldn't get to the point where everything is boiling up and it's just this little tiny thing that makes it overflow.
Right. And I learned so much when everything was going on with Hunter, and then everything that was going on with your dad, and then everything that was going on with you. I mean, we've gone through a lot of medical and health concerns in our family. And I learned so much through all that that I cannot do it on my own. Right.
Mhm.
And did have to get to the point of overwhelm so that I realized that I needed help.
Yeah.
And I also realized that, you know what? I didn't have to go to bed that night having cleaned the whole house first. I mean, there was a season where I just wanted everything in order because I felt like I was able to control it. I
Mhm.
was able to control those things, and so I wanted the house to be in order, so I would clean everything and it was like, "Wait, no, you need to be resting right now because you have so much on your plate that you have to rest."
Right.
And so during those seasons I learned that I needed help,
Mhm.
more help than I realized, and I had to delegate that. I had to say, "Can you help me with this?" And that also happened another time that I can remember being completely overwhelmed was when your dad was in New York City for his second ankle reconstruction surgery, because the first one didn't work. So, he
Yeah.
was there for a second reconstruction surgery. We had been at the hospital all day long. It was hard. It's never easy being in a hospital. We've spent
Mhm.
day after day after day after day, months in hospitals.
Mhm.
And so it was just one of those nights. I got home from the hospital. Daddy was still there. I got to the hotel and I was completely overwhelmed to the point of panic attack.
Mhm.
And it was scary. It was horrible. I realized that I needed help. So the very next day, I had to call in the troops. I had to call in Daddy's brothers. I said, I need help. I can't do this. And it's hard to not be able to be there and to help, right?
Right.
It's really hard to make that decision and say, I have to let somebody else step in because I can't do it. Again, I was overwhelmed with so much that was going on. And I needed to make that decision in that moment that I was gonna let somebody else come and sit with daddy at the hospital. And that was awful for me, and I had to leave him, and I did. When I say I had to, I mean, I knew I had to go. I
Mhm.
knew I had to come back home. I knew I had to get to a place where there was gonna be some time for me to think and pray and release all of the emotions that I was going through and deal with being overwhelmed.
Right.
And so, yes, daddy's brothers came. They stayed with daddy while I went home and was able to start figuring out for myself what was going to help me to get through that season. And that involved a lot of things. And I know we're going to share a lot of the things that have helped us in our seasons of overwhelm.
Yeah, before we dive into those, let's talk about some of the signs of being overwhelmed.
Right.
And this comes from the Calm app. Mom, do you want to share a little bit about the Calm app? I know you have used it in the past too for breathing exercises and stuff like that.
This is not a
This
promotion.
is not an ad.
This
This
is
is
not
not
an
an ad.
ad.
But we do need to
Yeah.
give credit.
Yeah, credit where credit is due. So, yeah, the Calm app, I got this from their website, actually, this information, the 7 signs of overwhelm and the 8 causes of overwhelm. And Calm, they have breathing exercises, music, sounds to help you calm your nervous system. And I have used it in the past. I don't use it all the time, but there has been times when I've needed to use the Calm app and it's been very helpful. And so I thought this information would be really helpful to our listeners. It was helpful to me. Although when I was reading the signs of overwhelmed. I was starting to feel overwhelmed. It's true. I was like, oh, I have felt those things many times. So, but recognizing these signs can help us to understand what we need to do
Right.
and to take a step back and to take care of ourselves and improve everything that's going on in our lives.
Right. So here are the 7 signs of overwhelm. Number 1, racing thoughts and difficulty concentrating. Number 2, feeling confused or forgetful.
Hmm. That's
Hmm.
familiar.
I
Even
think
when
that
you're
also has to do
pregnant.
with pregnancy.
Right. And
Hmm.
age and menopause. So I
Right.
relate.
If
Yeah.
you have these, it could also be other
Other
things, not
things.
just
That's
overwhelm.
right.
We will
That's
say
right.
that. Okay, number 3, physical symptoms like a racing heart, breathlessness, headaches, or stomach aches. Number 4, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up tired. Number 5, constant worry and rumination.
Mm.
Number 6, low energy and wanting to withdraw from people or activities you usually enjoy. Number 7, irritability, sadness, or anxiety.
I just want to add that irritability one. It's interesting because sometimes when you are overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
you're not nice,
Yeah.
right? You feel like you lash out and you don't mean it. That's the thing. You don't mean to lash out, but you are at the end of your rope. You're not even grasping onto the rope. You're just free falling
Right.
at that point. And it's like you lose your temper easily and you get angry or frustrated about things that you normally wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's just clearly signs that you're either moving into a place of feeling overwhelmed or you already are.
There have been many times with Parker where just
Poor
different
Parker.
I know
Poor
Parker,
daddy. Poor
such a good
Jim.
husband.
Oh,
But there have
yeah.
been many times where I will say something that I don't mean or get frustrated and upset and whatever the case may be over something that in his mind, he's probably like,
What's the
Erin,
big deal?
what's the big deal? And then once I have had a moment to kind of breathe and like step away, I'll like text him or go in his office and be like, I'm really sorry. I'm just feeling overwhelmed. And
Hmm.
when I think back on those moments where I get frustrated with Parker or I say something angry or that I didn't mean, it's usually linked to when I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
And that's usually what I say to him. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Parker. I'm just feeling overwhelmed because, and I think that goes back to really talking to people when you are overwhelmed and trusting other people with the overwhelm that you're going through and saying, hey, this is where I'm at right now. And so it helps Parker too to know not to have unrealistic expectations of me when
Yes.
I'm feeling overwhelmed. So whether it's a husband or a wife or whoever it is in your life, a son, daughter, mom, dad, whatever, whoever's in your life constantly when you are feeling overwhelmed, it's important to let them know.
Right.
That way they don't have expectations of you for certain things that you can't meet at that time.
Right.
Because maybe on an ordinary day, you would be quick to do something, whether
Right.
that's, I don't know, going shopping for groceries or doing laundry or whatever. And so you may have already committed to something too and not realize that you would feel more overwhelmed in that moment. And so I
Right.
think it's important for the people in your life who are closest to you to know when you feel really overwhelmed. That way they can help you navigate through it. And that way they don't have unrealistic expectations that aren't being met.
I think something that's really important that you mentioned is that you acknowledged that you felt overwhelmed. You did
Mhm.
that when you came to me. You did that when you went to Parker, as you just mentioned. And I think it's so important that we get to that place that we can acknowledge, like, I cannot do one more thing. And then going to someone with that and telling them and not trying to do one more thing.
Right.
Instead, it's acknowledging that you really can't do it. And I think that is vital, in fact,
Absolutely.
to dealing with overwhelm.
Right. Okay, let's move into the 8 causes of overwhelm. Once again, this is from the Calm app. And there are a lot of different factors that go into feeling
Right.
overwhelmed. And here are just a few. Number 1, too many responsibilities, whether it's work, home, or our social lives, too many responsibilities. Number 2, life transitions or changes, like being pregnant.
Right. They didn't even list
They didn't even
that.
list
We
that.
need to let them know.
Right?
Are you kidding?
Being pregnant or moving to a new place, starting a new job, going through a significant personal change. I guess pregnancy would fall into significant personal change.
100%. You're growing a human being.
Exactly.
That is a
Exactly.
huge life transition and change.
Right.
Nothing will ever be the same, by the way, Erin. Let me just remind you of that.
Thank you.
Nothing will ever be
Don't
the
don't add to the
same.
overwhelm. Okay, number 3, difficulties in relationships, whether with family, friends, or partners. Number 4, personal or family health issues can be a major source of stress and overwhelm. This includes managing chronic illnesses, navigating healthcare systems, or worrying about health in general.
Can I just add to this? What's interesting is that feeling overwhelmed can actually impact our
Right,
health.
right.
I mean, it doesn't just impact our relationships and our ability and our performance and the things that we're trying to do on a daily basis. It impacts your body and your mind. So it
Mhm.
impacts your health. So this is just, another reason to deal with it
Right,
and to
exactly.
address it and not ignore it.
Right. Number 5, worries about money, such as debt, expenses, or job security. Number 6, information overload, including news, social media, emails, and other forms of communication. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, this
This
is
one's big.
yeah,
I mean, they're all
definitely.
big and they all make sense. But this is like kind of one of those things that's a daily thing.
Right,
We
right.
choose what we take in.
Mm,
We control that.
mhm.
I think. I mean, we control whether we look at social media, we control whether we look at the television and watch news. We control what we feed our
Yeah.
mind and body, right? So it's important to know that, be aware of it, and have the self control to say, no.
Well, and in different seasons, you may feel differently. In different seasons, you may be able to take in more social media or more news, and in other seasons, you may not be able to.
Right.
Okay, number 7, high expectations, whether academic, professional, or personal standards. And number 8, concerns about the environment, political climates, or global events, especially when these issues feel beyond our control.
And most of those issues are out of our control.
Right, right.
They're out of our control. And we have no control over them. So, yeah, those can cause you to be more stressful and more worried. I just want to go back really quick and mention something about number 7, high expectations. You've dealt with being a people pleaser and a perfectionist.
Oh,
So, when
yeah.
you heap so many expectations on yourself that no one else has,
Mhm.
not even God himself keeps those kind of expectations on us, right? It's causes like a tremendous amount of stress. But we're also, we're high achievers. We want to do good and we want to, do 110% all the time. But that is not realistic. It really
Right.
isn't. We're human. Wow. That is something that my counselor has said to me
Yeah.
many times. She reminds me, Jill, I just want to remind you of something today. You're human.
Mhm.
And sometimes we think we can do more than we can, and we strive and we push and we try, and that's why I'm just so thankful that grandma asked this question, that we're able to talk about it and
Me
dive
too.
in, because I think everybody can relate and everybody can use these tips that we're going to share and benefit from this.
Absolutely. So let's dive into our 12 tips for how to deal with feeling overwhelmed. And these are based on our personal experience.
Right.
So
Yes.
we do hope that this helps you and this encourages you. Number 1, pause. Literally, stop.
Right. Yeah,
Take a
that's
minute.
hard.
Take a minute. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think when we are overwhelmed, it's usually in moments where we're going, 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 going.
Right.
And to just stop can feel overwhelming. To tell
Right.
yourself, I need
Yes.
to stop, I
Yes.
need to rest, I need to take a minute. But if you think about it in a way that, okay, I'm pausing so I can reset and so I
Mm,
can determine what in my life is a priority and what is not,
right.
and what can I say no to, what can I say yes to, that will help you to move forward. So I think that the first thing is to pause.
Well, and this makes me think of you and your sister Cameron when you're like, Mom, just stop.
Yeah.
Because I do have a tendency to keep going. I do until I get to the point, it's usually around 6 or 7, where I'm like, "Okay, I can stop." I mean, I'm so thankful that I have the energy, but I know I have to stop.
And after you take a moment to pause, number 2, pray. God knows what you need better than you do.
Yes.
And if we stop and pause, our immediate response should be to pray and to ask God, God, can you help me to not feel
Right.
so overwhelmed? Can you help me to know how to navigate the overwhelm, know what I can take out of my life that is causing me to be overwhelmed?
Right. And you and I will both journal. That's one of the
Yeah.
ways in which I pray is through journaling. And so that would be number 3. Grab a journal, grab something. Even if you don't journal. I mean, Erin, you and I do, but if you don't journal, maybe just take a piece of paper, find a notebook and just write down why you're feeling overwhelmed. Write it all down. It's a way of releasing it, I think.
Mhm.
That's what journaling is for me. It's taking what's in my brain, in my mind, and what I'm ruminating over or dwelling on or whatever. It's taking it out and putting it on paper. And that has been so instrumental and so helpful to me. So even if it's just taking a piece of paper, I would suggest to highly write it down because it's a way of releasing it.
Absolutely, I agree. And another thing that we both do when we feel overwhelmed, and not just when we feel overwhelmed, but to avoid getting to a
Yes.
place of overwhelm.
Yes, and I think these are all for that too. It's
Yes.
not just to deal with it when you're already there. These are ways in which to help you not to get to that
Right.
place.
Right. And this next one is so important. Go for a walk or get some sort of exercise. I know that when I feel overwhelmed, sometimes I need to walk it out. Or I
Walk it
need
out.
to work it out, work
Worship
out
it.
it out and out of my body. But it's so helpful to move your body in a way that it just gets your mind out of a stuck place. Cause I think sometimes when I feel overwhelmed, it makes me feel stuck. And so
Yes,
moving
yes.
my body physically helps me to feel like I'm physically getting out of a place of overwhelm. And also, I love to go for a walk daily in
Mhm.
Buffalo when it's snowing out. I use the treadmill
Treadmill.
because, yeah, no, not with this cold and with the snow. But it's just so helpful for me and it helps get my mind off of what I'm overwhelmed with. And it also keeps me from getting to a place where I'm so overwhelmed.
And when you're walking, when you're exercising, I personally, I listen to the Immeasurably More podcast. Or no, I really do. I really do. Or I will listen to worship music because worship for me changes the atmosphere. It changes me. It changes so much. And I need to redirect my thoughts. That's what I really need to do when I'm in the midst of feeling so overwhelmed. I need to redirect my thoughts. I need to talk to God. And worshiping has been so vital for my life.
Another vital thing for your life that we can't live without is to breathe. That is
It's
another
hot,
one on our list. It really is because okay, I don't mean obviously everyone's like, okay, well, obviously I'm breathing, but be intentional in your
yes,
breathing.
yes.
It just helps regulate your nervous system, regulate your mind and your body in the moment. So breathe, mom.
Well, and I just
You
want
say this
to,
all the time
I
to
do.
me.
I do. And do you do it? I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. So
Yeah.
even sometimes before I get out of bed, I will breathe. I will do the 4-7-8 breathing pattern. Inhale 4 times, count to 4, right? Inhale 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And I'm telling you, it just sets this pace for me in the morning. Because sometimes before I even get out of bed, I already feel like I'm starting to get overwhelmed. So
Yeah.
I will start that breathing before I even get out of bed.
Yeah. It's
It's
a good
I
one.
don't know, but it works.
It's
I've even had a
practical.
headache sometimes, and I've done some deep breathing, and literally the headache will go away. You guys gotta try
You
it,
guys gotta
seriously.
try breathing.
No, it's really I don't know, and we should add to this hydration because we
We
always
always talk
talk
about
about
hydration.
hydration, and when you feel overwhelmed to the point that we're talking about, you're probably not taking in enough hydration, I can tell you that.
Yes, so breathe and
And
hydrate.
hydrate.
Okay, on to the next one, which is something we kind of talked about earlier, is to confide in someone close to you or a counselor and share how you're feeling. Confide in someone else. I think this is one of the biggest ones because when we don't talk about it or we don't admit that we feel overwhelmed,
Right.
we will feel more and
Or
more
overwhelmed,
overwhelmed.
right, because we're holding it in.
Right.
It's staying hidden, and we're not releasing that.
And then going along with that is another one. Ask people you trust to pray for you,
Yes. Ask for help.
right?
Literally ask for help. If you have too much on your plate, you need to see where someone can help you.
Yeah.
And you
And
need to let go of control. Like, I know
yeah.
for me, sometimes you guys, you know this. This is so ridiculous. This example I'm going to use, but the dishwasher, like sometimes I'll go and reload the dishwasher after you guys load the dishwasher. What is wrong with me?
Well,
That's a
because it's not
control
like
thing.
in certain
Well, because
places.
and
Yeah, yeah.
I'm really, really good at getting a lot in the dishwasher to wash. So anyway, that all of that to say that like I don't have to do that.
Right.
I do not have to do that. So I think there's a lot of different ways in which we can like
Ask
help
for help.
ourselves, ask for help, yes, but help ourselves not to add more
Right.
to
Right.
our already packed lives.
Exactly. Okay, number 9, listen to worship or calming music throughout the day if you can. This goes back to walking, like we
Right.
said, listening to worship while you walk, but this is different also, and this is something we do. We
Yes,
have worship playing basically all the time
we
throughout the
do.
house. I feel like it just changes the atmosphere. So if you can have worship music just playing throughout your house during the day, if you're doing laundry or doing dishes, I think that it's just a good way to change the atmosphere that you're in.
Well, and I just wanna add to that, we have an Alexa in our house, and before I even leave, I'll say, "Alexa, play Christian music for Bear." Bear
There's
is
our
our
dog.
dog, and I'm not kidding, like, even while I'm gone, I want the house to have worship music playing.
Mhm.
And maybe you're listening and you're like, "Worship music? I don't know what that is. I don't wouldn't even know what kind of worship music to listen to." I'm talking about even calm music, jazz, something that will calm your
Mhm.
nerves. We choose worship music because that's what we love, but there are other music choices out there
Yeah,
that can
and
help in this
right,
regard too and do the same thing, I think.
right, and if there's a particular artist or type of music that brings you joy and allows you
Right.
to feel calm,
Yes.
put that on around the house.
Right.
I think that that's super helpful and beneficial. Number 10, protect your mind and your heart from overload, which can lead to overwhelm.
Mm,
Take a social media break, read a book, turn the TV off, be creative. Something that gets your mind off of the things that are making you feel overwhelmed, like the news or social media, like we talked about before.
and we talk so much about that, but honestly, there's so much we can gain that is good from social media. But honestly, there's way more negative, I think, and it's hard though. It's one of those things where you feel like you're connected to people and you
Mhm.
feel like that's how you find out information, especially on X, it's like constant information, but it can be overload that leads to overwhelm.
Yeah, so I think each person individually has to know their limit when it comes to social media and taking in news and information in general. You just have to know when whatever season you're in, what you need and what's too much.
Right, and like you said, it's a season, it changes.
Right.
So you just have to be self-aware so you know what causes you to feel overwhelmed.
Yeah. Okay, this next one is probably the hardest, but also my favorite one.
Mhm.
And it is saying no.
Mm.
Which is so hard to do, especially when you're saying no to something you maybe really want to do,
Right.
or you're saying no, but you're worried about hurting someone else's feelings or disappointing someone else. But the truth is our no is so
It
powerful
is.
because if we say yes to everything, then our yes really has no value
Right.
because we're just saying yes and just we end up actually kind of resenting people sometimes because
Mm.
we are doing way way too much. And I have found so much value in saying no when it needs to be said.
Right.
And also a true no, I think, is actually a yes. Because if you are saying no to something, you're really saying yes to yourself and to your health and to your well being and to not feeling overwhelmed. And that's more important. When
Right.
I'm saying no to an invite somewhere or I'm saying no to something someone asks me to do, if I know in my heart and my mind that saying no is what's best for me and my mind and my body in that moment, and ultimately best for the people around me, then it's really saying yes to myself.
Amen.
And I think that when we are very conscious of the no that we say to other people, we're doing what's best for them too.
Right.
They may be disappointed in the moment, but there have been times where I've said yes to things and only given half of myself because I
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
fully in
Wow.
it,
That's
because I
so
really
good.
wanted to say no, or I didn't have the capacity to
Right.
say yes, but I did it anyway.
Right.
And so I think saying no is so, so powerful.
And like you said too, it makes your yes that much more valuable
Right. So,
because then you can pour yourself into whatever that
right.
yes is even more because you've said no somewhere else where you could.
Right. You sometimes your no is your greatest yes
Oh.
because you are saying yes to your needs, to calm, to less stress. You're saying yes to the people in your family. Maybe that's
Mm.
what you need to focus on is what's right in front of you and not
That's right.
saying yes to everything.
Oh, this is so that could be an episode, Aaron,
I like
all
that.
on its
Yeah.
own.
Yeah, I do.
Saying no. Let's do that.
Let's do that. I
Okay.
like that. That's a hard one,
Saying
but it's
no,
good.
right, saying no so you can say yes to what's
Right.
better.
Exactly. I
These are
love that.
so good.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a lot of one-liners from this one.
I think too that this just reminds me of what's been going on in my own life and feeling overwhelmed. And recently, there have been things where, in being pregnant and all of the things and doing the podcast, which I love to do, but things are very overwhelming. And so recently, I kind of just took inventory of everything in my life. And I was just like,
I didn't
okay,
know this, Erin.
yeah, I
I
did.
like this.
Yeah, and so I kind of just looked at the things in my life, whether it was my job, doing the podcast, counseling, just all of the different things that I had on a weekly basis, on a daily basis that I had to do or wanted to do. And I looked at it all and I prioritized it. And I said, okay, what is non negotiable in my life?
Yes.
What is a priority in my life? What is a part of things that I need to do? And what can I step away from? Or what can I give less time to? And it was
Mm,
so helpful for me and actually helped me not to feel overwhelmed. And I think it's not always saying a no either. Sometimes it's not right now or not in
right.
this season,
Right.
or maybe you're stepping back from something or taking a break from something. It doesn't always have to be a hard no. It can be well, no, just not right now in this season of my life.
Right.
Maybe you can take a step away from something. So I have found that to be very helpful and beneficial is to really take inventory of everything in my life on a day-to-day basis when I am feeling overwhelmed and kind of reevaluating everything. And it helps you to recognize what's most important in your life.
Well, and what's most important in your life is your relationship with God and your relationship with people.
Right.
First and foremost. I mean, the people in our lives do come first.
Amen.
After God, of course, like our relationship with him and focusing on that has to come first because all of our relationships will suffer, I believe, if that does not come first, our relationship with God. So, yes, that's awesome. Which leads to the last one, which is practicing gratitude and focusing on God and who he is and all that he has done. I feel like when we do this, it doesn't matter whether we're in a season of feeling overwhelmed or any other situation in life, when we put God first and foremost in our lives, he does promise to take care of everything else. And
Amen.
when he says that he's going to do it, he's going to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's a God of his word.
Right.
And so we can trust that when we focus on him, he will help us to manage and navigate everything else in our lives and to practice gratitude. I'm telling you, when I start to thank God, when I just sit there and I'm just like, God, thank you. I have an alarm on my phone. It goes off at 2 o'clock every
Mm-hmm.
day. And it's just an opportunity to thank God for whatever's happening in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just the other day, we were actually at a workout, which again has helped with overwhelm. And it was going off and you were like, Mom, your alarm's going off. And all I did was just like, God, thank you that I can physically do this.
Right.
Thank you that I'm here. And thank you that we can work out together. And so it's just an opportunity to reorganize, reflect on what is most important. And certainly thanking God and focusing on him is of the utmost importance.
Absolutely. Let's end this episode by sharing some verses that I think will be encouraging to someone who feels overwhelmed. 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Matthew 11:28-30, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Isaiah 41:10, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. In Psalm 122:1-2, I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth.
You guys memorized that one when you were little. Do you remember that?
I do. Yes, I love that verse. It's very encouraging. So, Mom, this has been an amazing episode. And
Wow,
I
so
don't know about
much.
you, but I already feel less overwhelmed.
So do I.
It was
So
really, it
I
felt
do
really good to
too.
talk about it.
It does. It
It
does.
really does.
And we can't be those kind that like don't practice what we preach.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I love having all of this information. I love that we can apply this to our own lives and hopefully you've listened and you apply all of this to your own life as well. And This has been awesome. I'm very thankful,
Yes.
and I don't feel overwhelmed anymore.
Yeah, I feel very peaceful and at
Yeah, I
ease, and
do.
I'm just really thankful we talked about this. So thank you, Grandma. Thanks
Yes,
for the
thanks for the
question, Grandma.
question. Yes.
Oh, okay, Mom. Will you close us in prayer?
Heavenly Father, thank you so much that you are the way through every single situation in our lives, Lord. And when we get to a place where we feel overwhelmed, where we just cannot do one more thing, we're just so thankful that we can run to you in the midst of that because you already know. You've got it all figured out and you already have a plan to help us through it. So we thank you so much that, God, you are with us, you are for us, and you will help us to work it all together for good because that's the kind of God you are. You're good, you're faithful, you're kind, you're loving, and you're so patient. God, help us to always remember that no matter what kind of season we're in, that you are always doing immeasurably more than all we could ever ask or imagine. In Jesus' name, amen.